Welcome to the Master of Professional Psychology School Psychology online webinar. Thanks for joining us online. This webinar is a chance for you to learn about our course, explore your options and to get all your questions answered. So thanks again for joining us. So the webinar will run for about 30 minutes tonight and there'll be a chance in the end to ask all of your questions. But before we begin, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which the University of Wollongong is situated. We pay our respects to Aboriginal elders past, present and emerging, who are the knowledge. We acknowledge their continual spiritual and cultural connection to country. As we share knowledge, teaching, learning and research within this university, we also pay respect to the knowledge embedded forever within the Aboriginal custodianship of country. So before I pass on to our panel tonight, I'll just start by giving you a little bit of housekeeping. So if you're not familiar with Zoom webinar, how this will work is we'll deliver this presentation from the panel, and there's opportunity for it to be as interactive as possible. So to do this, you can ask any of your questions by, if you go down to your menu toolbar, you can see the Q&A icon. You can hit that, a Q&A box will come up and you can type in any of your questions and one of two things will happen. Either a member of the panel will actually respond to you straight away, or it might be the case that we'll just hold off that question and we'll put it to the full panel at the end of the webinar during the Q&A. So we're not using the chat function or the raise hand option during this webinar. So just direct all of your questions to the Q&A, and my advice is don't hold back. There's no silly questions. Ask as many as you want or provide feedback or comments, and we'll make sure the panel hear all about it. So let's get started. I'll pass directly onto the team. So I'll start with Ellie.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Janet. Well, welcome everybody, and it's so great that you could join us tonight for this webinar, and we really do hope to be able to answer all of your questions. So just to echo what Janet said, please don't hesitate to ask away with any kind of question that comes to your mind. A little bit about me. I'm a lecturer in the clinical and professional psychology programs at UOW, and I'm also the course coordinator for the Master of Professional Psychology in School Psychology, the course that we're going to be talking all about this evening. I'm also joined by a number of my colleagues on the panel. So we will be having Vicky and Roslyn join us on screen, and there's also a couple of other panel members who will be assisting off screen in answering all of your questions. So we have Naomi and Sarah behind the scenes. I'll hand over to Vicky now to introduce herself.
Hello everybody, welcome, and it's lovely to have the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm Vicky Miletus and I'm the Psychology Development Coordinator for the Department of Education, and in my role I work with the Psychology and Wellbeing team in our head office as part of our broader learning and wellbeing team to deliver a range of opportunities for our school counselling staff, which includes a suite of scholarships, of which this is part. I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit about our scholarship and also about the role of a school psychologist, and I know Roslyn will also cover off on that as well. So sit back and enjoy our presentation.
Thanks, Ellie and Vicky. My name's Ruslan Epoff. I was part of the 2019 Master of Professional Psychology School Psychology cohort. I'm currently completing my 5+1 internship across 2 schools in Western Sydney, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight speaking with you.
Okay, so we have a presentation that we've put together for you to give you, I guess, quite a good overview of the Master of Professional Psychology and School Psychology. Important things to know. So look, in terms of professional psychology courses at UOW, we actually offer a number of different courses. There is the Master of Professional Psychology, which is a 1-year on-campus course. We also offer the Master of Psychology in Clinical Psychology, which is a 2-year course that's also run on campus. And the PhD in Clinical Psychology is another course that we offer, which is a 4-year course also run on campus, which features both the clinical training experience of the Master of Psychology in Clinical Psychology, as well as quite a significant research component. But the course that we're going to be talking about today is the Master of Professional Psychology in School Psychology, which is a 1-year course which is delivered in an online flexible mode. And part of this involves the online delivery of coursework, but also the attendance at 2 on-campus face-to-face teaching blocks throughout the year of the course. To give you a little bit more of information about this course, it's a specialisation that is for graduates who have completed a 4-year accredited psychology program who want to pursue a career as a psychologist, but particularly with an emphasis on school psychology. And it's a program that aims to prepare you to work as a school psychologist by providing a 5th year of structured learning, plus an additional placement experience in supervised practice within a school. And following completion of the 5th year degree, you also undertake a supervised internship in your 6th year. And this is a 6 year of study that will lead to registration as a psychologist in Australia. So in terms of the aims of the course, it's 1 year of full-time education in the professional practice of psychology. And it really is building on the existing knowledge and skills that you've gained in your prior studies. The philosophy of the course is very much based on the scientist practitioner model. So you do get to be exposed to a range of different methods and modalities in terms of clinical practice and evidence-based approaches in psychology. It's quite broad in nature, but there also is a particular emphasis on psychology in the school context and really teaching the core skills that you need to be able to practice as a school psychologist. It also develops the core professional competencies which are outlined in the Australian Psychology Accreditation Council standards. So importantly, when it comes to this course, successful applicants are also the recipients of a New South Wales Department of Education scholarship. And this includes, I guess, an allowance for a number of things, including course fees, textbooks, and other incidental allowances. Vicky's going to be telling us quite a bit more about the scholarship, what it involves in a moment. And part of the conditions of the scholarship is that a student is able to undertake the 1-year internship during the year of study and throughout into their 6th year, in terms of their 6th year of the program. And it also leads to, upon completion of that internship, employment as a school psychologist within the Department of Education. So thinking a little bit about the way that this course is delivered. So I mentioned that it is a flexible online delivery. And what this really means is that it's a combination of things like e-learning, online lectures, webinars, online discussion groups using things like Zoom, and also opportunities to do simulated practice exercises by using these technologies. And the 2 1-week intensive teaching sessions that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation are also a part of this course, or intended to be. in terms of the current climate, that may need to be revised. But essentially, these 2 one-week blocks of training are all about having the opportunity to develop practical skills and do competency-based assessments. The course also may require attendance on campus for some end of semester scheduled exams. And the other very important part of the course is the attendance at the work-based placements in schools, which takes place for 2 days per week. And at the end of the program, the requirements for the 5th year are to complete a minimum of 300 hours of experience within these placements. And here you can see an overview of the course structure in terms of the subjects that are involved. So there's an annual subject, PSYP 923 practicum, which is all about the essentially the placement experience and various assessments that are involved. In autumn, there are 3 subjects: assessment, psychotherapy A and research A. And in spring, another 3 subjects: psychotherapy B, school psychology in context, applied interventions, and research B. So in summary, the Master of Professional Psychology in School Psychology is a 5+1 pathway to registration, general registration as a psychologist in Australia. A very important component of the course is the scholarship from the Department of Education, which Vicky will tell us all about in just a moment. The flexible delivery of this course is a very appealing feature to a lot of students and means that a lot of the coursework is completed online, while there are also the opportunity for 2 intensive weeks of teaching on campus. These do typically occur in O week of autumn session, and spring session is another point that I'll mention. So there is a research component in this course as well. And of course, the other great thing that you get to experience is the placement within New South Wales schools as a provisionally registered psychologist, which really gives you that opportunity to put the coursework and your knowledge and skills into practice. So I'll hand over Vicky now to tell us a little bit more about the Department of Education scholarships.
Thanks, Ellie. As Ellie said, the scholarship provides the opportunity to experience life and work as a psychologist in schools. As you can see on the slide here, we provide rural and metropolitan scholarships. What that means is if you apply for a rural scholarship, you're essentially electing to work in a rural area, and our rural schools across the state and provide great opportunities for graduates to work with a diverse range of children and young people, and also to make real connections with community. Working in a rural setting provides so many opportunities that sometimes in metropolitan areas you may not get, and I would encourage you to have a look at those. So as you can see here, in terms of the scholarship, the rural scholarship provides, will pay for your fees. There is an employment allowance, so when, as part of this scholarship, as well as receiving the 2 days a week of practicum experience that Ellie outlined, once you complete your 5th year of study, we place you in a school on a full-time basis. It's a paid internship. You're essentially employed at that point, and the allowance is spread over that year, which will provide you with the essentials that you may need for the commencement of that employment. You can spend it whichever way you wish to help you settle into your new role and career. We also provide you with a textbook and incidental allowance, as you can see there. As I said, the supervised work placements in schools enable you to complete the requirements of registration. So the supervision is provided by our board-approved supervisors. through the department. You get the opportunity to work with a number of supervisors. There'll be one person that will be allocated to you. However, the way our school counselling workforce and school psychologists are part of that workforce work, you're part of a team, and you work across a district of schools, a small district of schools, and you work alongside other school psychologists and school counsellors who are able to mentor you as you develop your skills and your experience. We also provide inductions at the beginning of your studies, throughout the year, throughout your 5th year, and then we also provide you with an induction when you commence your employment. And the induction provides you with some practical skills in terms of the work that you may do in schools, for example, in assessment, but also introduces you to the way education works, your role within education, and how you will operate in that role. I might go to the next slide. Some of those last points are consistent across the 2 scholarships. The Metropolitan Scholarship similarly provides you with the same opportunities, but it's focused on metropolitan schools in metropolitan Sydney. So you'll see in the application when we talk about how you apply, and you'll see the information package through the links that we present to you. You'll have more details there about the types of schools that are in those metropolitan and rural areas, and then your role within those schools as well. You'll notice at towards the end of the slide, the last couple of dot points, that we have a number of locations where our school populations are growing, and we are needing to have psychology staff in schools working alongside our teachers in those locations. And when we look to employ our new school psychologists, we'll be looking to appoint people to those schools where we need them. The internship, the scholarship is a bonded scholarship, which means that once you commence your scholarship, you will be committed to working in those schools for a period of 3 years after you complete your internship. Just to recap, in terms of the requirements for the scholarship, you have to be able to, you have to meet the requirements of the of entry for the Master of Professional Psychology through Wollongong University, which requires a 4-year sequence of psychology study. I won't read through all the requirements there. You can see them on the screen. You need to apply both to the university for the course, and you also need to apply to the department for the scholarship. We will be assessing applications independently, but also working together with the university to make our final selections. And I'll hand over to Ellie again.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Just restarting my video. Okay, so we're getting really down to the nuts and bolts now of how to actually apply for this course. So to give you a little bit more information here, like Vicky said, it is a 2-step process. So you have to complete both the application to UOW as well as the separate application to the Department of Education. Conveniently, these are both due on the 18th of October. So I would really encourage all of you, if you're interested in applying for this course, to start pulling together these applications, give yourself plenty of time to pull together the various requirements that you need, and really, start the process well ahead of time is my advice. I'll talk a little bit more now about the application process from the UOW side. So in terms of the deadline, I mentioned the 18th of October. And in terms of the applications for all of our professional programs here, including the Master of Professional Psychology and School Psychology, what you need to submit is, first of all, a personal statement. And this is really an opportunity for you to talk about your qualifications, your relevant experiences that you might have had. For example, things like any volunteer work that you may have done, for example, for Lifeline. And you can also talk about a little bit about what your reasons are for choosing to study professional psychology at this time. The next component is 2 referee reports. So these are submitted in an online system, the Psychology Reference System, and there are lots of details about how to access that system on our website using a link that I'll get to in a moment. If you are interested in applying also for the Doctor of Philosophy in Clinical Psychology or the PhD in Clinical Psychology program, you do also need to submit a preliminary research proposal. And following our shortlisting of applicants for these courses, we will be holding interviews in mid to end of November. So that will be across several days. So like I said, there are a lot of detailed instructions on how to apply on our School of Psychology Clinical and Master Degrees website, which you can find the link here. There's lots of helpful, very clear step-by-step information, and even a frequently asked question section if you do get stuck and run into any difficulties along the way. So just a little bit more now about applying to UOW. So what you need to do to make this application in terms of starting off the process is go to the UOW website, scroll down to the Start Your Journey section, and you can enter the Master of Professional Psychology School Psychology course and search for it. This will take you to a course finder page and you will see that program appear. And once you see that, you'll see that there is an Apply Now button that you can press. And a little bit more from Vicky now in terms of applying the New South Wales Department of Education end.
Okay, so in order to, the recruitment process is concurrent. So we have our interviews at the same time as the university has their interviews. But in terms of applying for the course, the links will be up on the webinar for you to go into. You'll find on our web pages comprehensive information, an information package with all the details of the scholarship and also the process to apply. The application is an online application, and when you complete it, you'll also need to write a statement for the position of school psychologist, why you are applying, what your interest is in school psychology, what you bring to that kind of role. And when you're looking at those applications, I encourage you to be thinking about your interest in student wellbeing, in student welfare, in what you in your connection and your passion for working with children and young people. We, as well as looking at people's academic qualifications and suitability for a role like this, it's very important for us to also be looking at your personal suitability and what you bring to the role. We provide a lot of support, a lot of professional development, and we really encourage and like people to commit to the work that they do with students in our schools. It's a very rewarding career. Ruslan will be able to talk a little bit more about how he's found it. And it's important that you connect with children and young people. So they're the sort of things that we're looking at when we're assessing the applications. But in any case, all the details about how you apply will be on the department's website. You'll link in through the links as you see there, and it's a very structured and guided process for the application. And my phone number's there too if you'd like to give me a call or pop me an email with any questions that you have after this webinar.
Great, thank you very much for that, Vicky. So look, we're moving towards the end of our presentation now, but I'll just say a few more words about, unless you're not already completely sold on this course, I'm sure you're very interested to hear the unique opportunity that it provides. But in terms of some of the reasons and the real highlights for considering studying this course, you get to become a school psychologist. And really, as Vicky was saying, to be in a challenging and exciting placement within New South Wales schools, and might I add, really supported by supervisors and colleagues, and part of, you know, a really, I guess, well-structured and nurturing organisation. Which also, I guess, the element of ongoing employment upon graduation. So following, well, I guess immediately after your 5th year, really, in your 6th year, you are employed. And then you also have a pathway of further employment after that, which is a real benefit for a lot of interns in terms of that sense of job security. The flexible learning environment is something that our interns really do value. We receive a lot of positive feedback. It really does allow students to be able to balance other responsibilities they may have in family and work and outside duties, and to really, I guess, take control of their learning experience and really utilise that flexibility. The scholarship granted by the Department of Education is also a very nice benefit that a lot of people really do enjoy. You get to study with approachable academics at UOW who have exceptional skills in teaching in the coursework component of this particular course, and are really very passionate about teaching the next generation of school psychologists. And I think this is probably the most important point for me. You get to make a difference in the lives of children and young people. So you get to really, I guess, be there at the coalface, really making a difference where it counts in terms of working towards, I guess, really enhancing the well-being of children and young people. And of course, also the weekly live sessions to be able to learn and share from others or share with others. We've really established this course in a way that does allow a lot of interaction through the online platforms that we use. And so you really get to have that opportunity to connect with your colleagues within the course, and also with the teaching team and academic team at UOW, as well as with students who are studying more broadly across the professional and clinical programs at UOW. But it's probably important that you hear from a student themselves who has been through this experience. So I would really like to thank Ruslan for providing his time this evening to talk to us about his experiences studying in this program. And I'll hand over to you, Ruslan, to say a few words.
Thanks very much, Ellie. As I said before, it's a pleasure to be here, and it truly is such an important role. And yeah, I'm more than happy to donate my time to ensure that we get more good people into this role. So I guess there's sort of 2 experiences to speak on: the experience of the uni course itself and the experience of the 5+1 year thus far. So in terms of the uni course, you know, it's really taken working independently this year to realise how well I was actually trained during that year. As Ellie mentioned, you learn from a range of amazing clinicians and academics who specialise in various therapeutic modes: ACT, CBT, motivational interviewing, psychodynamic therapy. You get a taste of everything. And it really provides you with a base of foundational theoretical and clinical knowledge in these areas. And you can really build upon that base as an independent clinician through your placement, your internship year, and future career. The flexible delivery is great. It was really valuable for me as it allowed me to continue working and supporting myself financially. It does require a sense of motivation, but you know, if you guys have made it through your undergrad and your fourth year studies, I'm sure you have that covered. And as Ellie mentioned, the course is also set up in such a way that allows for the cohort to actually connect. So originally I had some reservations about online delivery, but my whole MPP cohort are still in contact with each other weekly, almost daily with some of them. That's such a huge benefit, going through a course with like-minded people who will be working in the same job, and they can continue to be peers that you can lean on, you know, professionally and personally. It's like having a team outside of your area team that Vicky's spoken about. Clear also the bonuses of being provided with supervision, knowing that you have the paid internship year and a future job lined up. You know, that security is priceless. And yeah, I also felt really supported the whole way. You're provided with supervision from multiple psychologists and school counsellors. So yeah, my experience was really positive. And in terms of the internship year this year, I know the words rewarding, challenging and exciting have been thrown around, and I think they are spot on descriptions of the role. The real highlight for me of this job is you get all the core psychology work plus a range of, you know, added extras that keep the job so refreshing and interesting. It's a very multifaceted role. So we have, you know, the traditional assessment and intervention that we do, but also I know it's been mentioned, it's such an important role. As school psychologists, we're essentially frontline mental health professionals. And given that, you know, most psychological issues become apparent during the schooling years, we essentially give a lot of children and adolescents the first taste of what speaking with a psychologist is like and the benefits it can provide for them. So modeling that role is just so important, and it's really a vital make or break role. Another really positive thing that I've taken away is that from the role is the chance to advocate for students within the school environment. We work closely with our executive team, our learning support team, and we're really there as mental health professionals to provide, you know, psychoeducation when it's needed, to explain a student's presenting problem, and we have consent, of course, so as to build empathy within the staff, and that's something that has been really rewarding for me. And yeah, students with mental health issues really need people like us in their corner. Schools are high-paced environments, and, you know, sometimes connection-seeking behaviours can be framed as attention-seeking, and it's really our job to be there to advocate for the students and have that knowledge of mental health presentations that nobody else in the school really has.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your experience, Ruslan. We really, really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Really helpful information, I think, for anyone considering studying this course. Okay, so I think we're at the part of our presentation where we'll wrap up now, and I will hand over to Janet for our question time.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we've got quite a few good questions, and I just wanted to hold them off until this Q&A time instead of jumping in or responding to some of them, because they're so good, and I think it would really benefit others to hear some of the answers to these questions, and also to give them the time that they deserve. So we've got about 8 questions to get through, and I'll start off with a question saying, what would be the difference to the work placement offered in the degree to the internship offered through the scholarships?
Will I jump in there, Ellie?
Would you like to jump in, Vicky? That would be great. Yeah,
no, I'm happy to, and please come in if I miss anything. So the work placement in a school is essentially the applied practice that is required as part of the 5th year course as a provisional psychologist for the 5th year. During that practice, you're working towards demonstrating your knowledge and applied learnings then of various competencies that relate to the work of psychologists, and these are competencies that the university will work with you on, and they align to the competencies required of registered psychologists. In the school setting, you're practicing those skills. So our school counselling staff, our psychologists and school counsellors are very experienced in the provision of supervision, and they will link you and connect you with other school counselling staff in different schools to give you a broad range of experience in terms of those competencies. So the way the work placement looks, it's 2 days a week full time, and you know, the days of the week are negotiable, but essentially 2 days a week for the course of that year, working across a number of schools under supervision. When you go into your internship, you've completed your academic work, the academic component of your course. The internship is a study year in terms of you're really practicing and working as a school psychologist, but you're an intern. You're not registered yet, you're provisionally registered, but for all intents and purposes, you're working supervised, but you've got to, it's a developmental year, I guess that's probably the best way of describing it, and you're progressing towards being independent in the role. Essentially you're performing every aspect of the school psychologist role in a school setting. In many cases you will have been appointed to the school that you will continue your employment in. You commence in temporary employment and then you will move on to ongoing permanent employment. Essentially, for many people, it will be in the same school, and you will have a group of schools that you work across. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. So maybe Ellie, you might want to add something. Or
that was great,
or
Vicky.
Ruslan, maybe you may have something to add there as well in terms of the
I think that you did a great job explaining the differences. For me personally, you know, the placement whilst completing the program, you're really learning. Obviously, the program provides you with a lot of core theoretical and clinical knowledge around how to deal with certain presentations, like in terms of assessment and intervention. And you do get a chance to put those into practice during the placement year, but you're also learning the ropes of the department. And then, yeah, as far as I've experienced it, the internship year's been a lot more independent. You're obviously still in constant close contact with your supervisor and your senior psychologist education. But yeah, you've really got a chance to go out and hone your own skills and yeah, develop them.
Okay, well, thank you. So we'll move on to the next questions because they're coming in thick and fast now, and they're all really great questions. So just to pick up on the work, on the placements, are the 2 day a week placements in the 5th year in metro areas?
It will depend. So if a person is in a rural area and taking up a rural scholarship, the placement will be in a rural area. Some of our people who live in metropolitan areas and take up a rural scholarship elect to move to a rural area during the university year, or travel, and it's open. We also have people sometimes who work who live in a metropolitan area, will take up a rural appointment, but during that 5th year of study, they're not able to move at that time. We will do our best to find we will match them to a metropolitan placement for that 5th year, with the understanding, if they've taken up a rural scholarship, that they will move to a rural location for the internship and then to continue working in that rural location. So there is some flexibility, but once you've committed to a rural scholarship, the understanding is that your internship and your ongoing employment will be in a rural location, but there is flexibility during that 5th year.
Okay, so the next question was, how competitive is the scholarship for entry, and would you have a better chance by choosing both rural and metropolitan areas?
it's very competitive. It's a very, you know, I think the news is out that it's a great job. So we have a lot of applicants, and yeah, so yeah, I guess in short, it's competitive. However, you do the more locations you select, the better it is. However, you need to understand that you have to commit. We will select people to meet our workforce needs, as well as the other factors in terms of people's suitability. But we really want people to commit to our students in New South Wales public schools. So you will be asked to choose whether you're taking up a rural or metropolitan scholarship. So choosing both, I guess, isn't necessarily an advantage. However, choosing widely within the rural scholarship program in terms of locations, or choosing widely within the metropolitan scholarship, will be a safe bet for you, on the understanding that once you're granted a scholarship, you'll have to commit to those locations.
Okay, the next question. If you wish to work in a rural school district, are you able to remain in this area throughout the internship and your subsequent position as a school psychologist, or are you expected to move around to different districts?
So once we appoint you to a position for your internship, we aim to appoint you to a position that you will stay in for the next 3 years as well. So we won't be moving you around necessarily. Our school counselling staff do move around schools within a defined district, but it's within a reasonable distance. So that includes our rural workforce. So you will be appointed to one school as we call it a base school, but you will also have other schools within your itinerary, which you provide psychological services to. And usually that district of schools are your schools for the entire year. So there are opportunities there. But yes, we do aim to keep you in the same location through your internship and then into your ongoing employment. Sometimes that's not possible, but there is flexibility. We'll talk to you about, you know, your travel, how much you're able to travel, what your other commitments are, and we'll make our best efforts to provide a good fit between your needs and our requirements.
Okay, so thank you. So the next question is, does the role differ much between primary school and high school setting?
There are differences. I'm happy to jump in, but Ruslan, would you like to comment on that from your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. In the high school, there's a lot of face-to-face counselling. You do a lot of intervention for a range of presentations, and a lot of referring to external agencies for more complex cases, and you still continue to play a support role in those cases. But the primary school is more focused on systemic work, you know, a lot of assessment to determine children's learning needs, ensuring that they're accessing the curriculum to the best of their ability, which usually involves cognitive assessments, functional assessments, emotional assessments, behavioural assessments. You do still do some face-to-face counselling, but yeah, it's a lot more systemic work, and it's really, really rewarding.
I think Ruslan summed it up quite well.
Okay, and then two questions regarding entry requirements. One was around, do entry requirements allow students studying a double degree, for example, Bachelor of Psychology and Commerce, contribute to the 4 years or the APAC accredited study, or would you have to take on the Psych Honours? And I'll just quickly refer to the other one again too. Yeah, the second person also, they're finishing the undergrad in psych. They just want to know if they need to complete another course, which would be the 4th year, before they enrol in this course.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. I'm happy to jump in there. Yeah, so my understanding would be that the 4th year of study would be required. So both the undergraduate 3-year sequence as well as the 4th year. I'm not sure if that answers the question. I'm happy to discuss it more offline if that would be helpful.
Yes, and I think there's always that useful diagram about showing the study pattern of 4 + 2. I think that's always a good reference point. So we might put that link, I know there's a website link that we might put up into the chat as well. And that's, I think students find that visual quite helpful as well. I'll just go to the next one. Can you please tell me more about the expectations around the research project?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to speak to the research project. So I guess that one of the main things to highlight is that it has actually changed a little bit this year. So look, my understanding is that throughout both of autumn and spring semester, you will complete a research subject in both semesters, which will be covering a range of different issues around research methodology and essentially being able to become somebody who can really understand and interpret and evaluate evidence-based practice. So there has been a little bit of a shift in the requirements now, and the final assessment, I guess, which these subjects lead into is something called a practitioner review. It could change again next year, but this year we've gone with the practitioner review, and essentially it's really a review of research studies. So rather than conducting your own empirical project, it's more so focused around reviewing the literature to answer a particular clinical or professional psychology related question.
Okay, let me just go to the next one. How do we address the criteria of needing to work with adults as a part of our provisional training?
I think I can actually speak on this if that's okay, because I actually had this exact same question coming into the course.
And I remember that, Ruslan, so I'm glad you jumped in.
Yeah, okay. I think you were waiting for me to jump in.
I'm really sorry to interrupt, but there's almost a second question that I think is quite similar.
Okay.
And as someone else has asked, after completing the 3 years with the department, are you just as qualified to work in settings outside of schools as if you did another master's course? Will the specialisation hurt future employment in different settings?
Look, I don't think I can answer that question personally without having a crystal ball in terms of future employment. I always got into the course with the hopes of becoming a school psychologist. So yeah, I can't really speak on that. But in terms of the question about how we fulfill our requirements of working across the lifespan as the board specifies, you do so much work with adults, especially in the primary school setting. You're not only working with your executive staff, your teachers and your learning support staff, and external agencies, you're also working with parents a lot, and you're supporting them in supporting their children. And, you know, sometimes this involves breaking some difficult news to parents, you know, in terms of letting them know that their child currently meets criteria for a certain, you know, intellectual disability or whatever is the outcome of the assessment. And you really draw on all your skills as a psychologist in those instances. It is part of the work. Yes, so I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and I'd like to, that's very good, Russell, and I'd like to also add that a school is a community. So it's a community of children and young people, parents, carers, teachers, and then external agencies who come into the school to work with our young people as well. Your work as a school psychologist will be diverse, and you'll be working with all those groups of people. So although the child or the adolescent may be your key client presenting with an issue, in order to support them and to work with them, you also will be needing to work with the adults in their life and helping them to engage with the adults in their lives. So it provides a richness in terms of the work that you do across the lifespan, which is quite unique, I think, for a psychology role. So you'll get lots of experience in working across the lifespan when you're working in schools.
Thanks, Vicky. Another question was, is there a difference between a school psychologist and a school counsellor?
The main difference is that school counsellors have a teaching qualification and have worked as teachers in their career, and then have studied postgraduate qualifications in psychology and have become school counsellors through that pathway. School counsellors are employed under the Teaching Award because essentially they have been teachers and then acquired the additional qualifications in psychology. In terms of the role itself and the work that you do in schools, it's the same role. So our school counselling staff includes school psychologists and school counsellors. Our school counsellors are able to be registered as psychologists, and they work towards psychology registration. In many instances, it will be the school counsellor who is a registered psychologist, who is a board-approved supervisor, who will be providing you with your supervision. So the two roles essentially in practice, there isn't a huge difference between the two roles. It's essentially the same role.
Okay, and is the internship full-time and is it paid or unpaid?
The internship is full-time and it's paid.
Okay, so we'll just give it a moment or two just for any last minute questions. We've gotten through quite quickly that bank of questions there. So just one final chance to ask any remaining questions, and I'll just open it up to the panel if they wanted to provide any closing comments or remarks.
I might just add to that last question, if you don't mind, Janet. It's a paid internship, full-time. It's employment. So once you commence your internship, you've essentially commenced your employment with the Department of Education. So I hope that gives you a little bit more information. And I guess in closing, I would like to say that we're very excited with this partnership with Wollongong University, and it has provided psychology graduates with a wonderful opportunity to be trained and work as psychologists in schools and really add to the complement of services that we provide for students in our public schools. And we value the graduates that come out of Wollongong. We work in partnership, so all through your study, we're working with you as well, alongside you in our schools, providing supervision, but also behind the scenes. We work very closely with your lecturers, with Ellie and the rest of the staff that you'll meet as you complete the course. What we want you to be is well qualified and very excited and passionate about this opportunity, and the department will do its best to support you in your development.
So there's no final questions. So unless Rosalind or Ellie, you wanted to jump in at the end, I'll just start the wrap up.
Oh, I'd just like to, oh, sorry, Rosalind, you go ahead.
No, you go, Ellie.
It always happens in Zoom. It always has to be this moment. No, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for attending. I hope you found the information to be really beneficial. And yeah, as Vicky has said, it is a wonderful partnership between the University of Wollongong and Department of Education, and a very popular program. And I do hope that you will consider applying and consider the really fantastic opportunity that will await you.
Just